Hey everyone, welcome to the Workstream Live Q&A. Today we are joined by Casey, Kanaan, and Allison Sproul. I'd love to just kick off by having you guys introduce yourselves and tell us about where you're based and also how many cities you serve.
Sure. Thank you, Lydia, for the opportunity to do this. My name is Casey Kanaan. I am the co-founder and CEO of Envoy America. I am based in Phoenix, Arizona. Today we serve approximately 22 or 23 different states and about 300 cities.
Wow, that's so many more than us. Hey everyone, and thank you. Thank you, Lydia, for inviting me to participate in today's webinar as well. I am the Senior Manager of People and Talent over at connectRN, and I don't know how many cities necessarily we service. However, we are currently in 10 states, and the majority of the facilities that we partner with are in the metropolitan areas of those states. At the moment, those are primarily concentrated on the East Coast and also somewhat in the Midwest, but hoping to get out west sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So let's just jump right in. When we talk about the number of cities and states that you guys are in, what I'm curious about is before all of this happened, how did you guys think about growth? Casey, like where did you start from, and then how did you expand city by city or state by state?
Sure. We started in Phoenix 5 years ago with the intent of serving the senior population that lived at home. We were very fortunate that a newspaper did a story on us, which led to different corporate clients like the American Cancer Society and the Jewish Federation and different senior living communities reading about us, reaching out to us to see if we can be of service to them. We started working with them in the Phoenix area, and our team did a great job serving them, that these corporate clients asked us if we were willing to expand and serve them in other locations. So we went from Phoenix to Tucson, Arizona to serve the American Cancer Society and their patients. And again, the team did a great job. Our team in serving them, that the American Cancer Society asked us to expand from Phoenix and Tucson to Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia. And then they requested that we expand to Albuquerque and Santa Fe. And that's how we've been able to expand, is recruiting the right people, training them, keeping them motivated, that they took great care of our clients, corporate clients, and then these corporate clients asking us to expand to different cities and different geographies.
Yeah. And Allison, how about your team? When we first started chatting, you guys were in 8 states. Now you're in 10. What is leading to the growth, and how do you guys decide where to expand?
Yeah, I mean, originally we started in Massachusetts. That is where our headquarters are based. Our co-founders, Mike and Idris, well, Mike was already local to Massachusetts, but Idris is actually Mike's brother-in-law. So he was relocating to be a little bit closer to family and had to then renew his nursing licensure in the US, but wasn't able to do so at the time. So he had to go back to school. And when supporting his family, he was reaching out to staffing agencies and looking to pick up shifts in his area, but wasn't necessarily able to do so. And the idea kind of came to him at the dinner table and chatting with Mike, wouldn't it be really cool if there was an app that just showed me all of the shifts that were available to work in my area? So starting locally in Massachusetts from his own need was where our initial focus was. And since 2016, 2017, our start date is a little, I will say questionable, just because our app didn't actually launch until 2017, but the idea was conceptualized before that. We've really grown out kind of like a cinnamon roll, if you will. So starting in Massachusetts and then trying to work our way out, because we serve our clients best with the healthcare facilities if we have enough supply of our clinical population to meet their demand. So naturally, we will continue to thrive in more densely populated metropolitan areas. So Massachusetts, and especially the Boston area, has been a really big one for us. going down to Rhode Island and now, as recently as of today, New Hampshire. But then also we started to break out down in the mid-Atlantic area. So really in Maryland and now Virginia as of recently, Pennsylvania with Philadelphia, and kind of working our way out from there. And then also, I believe our kind of center point in the Midwest right now is Columbus. The strategy has shifted a little bit, admittedly, in the pandemic. So hope you'll forgive me if I'm not speaking entirely correctly of what today's go-to-market strategy is.
It changes every day right now. And, you know, I think one of the things that businesses have to do is just adjust to it by having response teams. Allison, you know, in our prep call, you mentioned just how you guys sort of structured your COVID response team. I would love for you to go into that and also just talk about like who's on this team, like who makes up the COVID response team.
Sure. So in the COVID response team, we have a few more senior members of our customer success team. Our customer success team, for reference, is typically dealing with a very high volume of calls from our clinical population, who we definitely want to support. And then also our director of operations, who doubles as our head of clinician experience, myself in HR, and our chief product officer. So we're all kind of working together, making sure that first and foremost, that we had set up a time to create a protocol for what happens if a facility A tells us they have someone diagnosed as COVID positive, and then B, what happens if one of our clinical staff members is diagnosed with COVID. So we set it up such that for any time a nurse or a clinician is scheduled for a shift within the following 24 hours, they're sent a survey in a push notification where they have to respond a simple yes or no. Have you traveled to any of the countries on the CDC watch list in the past 14 days? Have you experienced any symptoms of COVID-19, such as coughing, runny nose, etc., fever? If so, what are they? And then number 3 being, have you been diagnosed positive for having COVID-19 or taking care of a COVID positive patient? Now, I did make the suggestion that we delineate that last question, since as we've gone now through this pandemic for a little over, 2 months, every 3 months? Time is always questionable right now. The vast majority, of course, have now taken care of COVID positive patients at this point, given how vulnerable the long-term care industry is with that population. But making sure that if the nurses or clinicians themselves had been diagnosed as positive, that we were helping them to submit workers' compensation claims, for example, where I might get tagged in. So with that survey, though, if they submit a yes, it will automatically page in a line of priority a certain member of our COVID response team. And so that gets escalated if someone misses the page, for example. So that way we're making sure that we're getting back to every single clinician who highlights an issue related to COVID-19 to us.
Yeah, I mean, that's just incredible that they're able to get such a fast turnaround and response time. You know, Casey, when we chatted, you mentioned that, you know, there's some communities, correct me on this, that they call themselves communities. I almost said facilities. That there are some communities that, you know, were really more proactive about it in terms of their COVID response teams. What are you seeing with those communities? What has been sort of like the best setup for them in order to, you know, be able to communicate with service providers such as yourself?
Sure. It's similar to what Allison has described. The community's leadership team got together early on and came up with protocols on how to react to the situation that we're in. And they communicated together frequently, as often as twice a day, morning and night, to keep a handle on this situation, because there's no playbook for how to deal with this situation. So the ones that have been successful at managing this crisis or during this crisis were the ones that communicated often, communicated honestly and openly with their team members, with the families that they serve, with their providers, people like us, and stayed calm, and helped keep everybody calm. We are dealing in a situation where no one has been exposed to it. These are uncertain times. People are panicking, from people that live at these communities to the family members that can see their family, their parents or their elderly family members, to providers that can't go in to do assessments or provide service. So the ones that communicated with us and looked at us as part of their team and an extension of their team, and they shared with us what they were going through and looked for us for providing input, are the ones that seem to navigate through these uncertain times better than anybody else.
Yeah, and what sort of has been the communication with those groups? I mean, is it phone calls, text message, email? I mean, how are you staying in touch with all of the different organizations you work with?
Sure, all of the above. There's no one method. So one of our clients that is focused on serving kidney dialysis patients. If you're familiar with kidney dialysis, it's 3 times a week, going in at some point during the day, and 4.5 hours coming back. They include us in all their communication, as in their daily team meetings. So we're reacting to the situation together. Some of their patients went from being healthy, not tested positive for the virus, to being exposed or diagnosed or tested positive, and work together on how we can serve this population that if they don't go to their life-sustaining medical appointments, it can have a major impact on their life. So with a client like this, we were on daily calls with them. We were an extension of their team, and we work with them as if we're their partner, and we are. The ones that needed somebody less frequently, as in delivering medication or taking somebody to their medical appointment, the communication happened on as-need basis, primarily phone calls, emails, text messages, whatever is the most convenient way for the client. So it's all over the place, the communication, and we've done a lot of Zoom calls for planning and strategizing with our business partners, and even with candidates that we've interviewed. We switched from doing in-person interviews to doing everything virtually now, including.
Yeah, and by the way, how is that going? I know on Workstream, we've been trying to do more and more with the video interviewing, and some people are even submitting their 30-second intro videos before they get a scheduled time. How has it been interviewing through Zoom? And are there any things that you have changed about your interview process as you switch to video?
Allison, I don't know if you want to take this, and then I'll add to it.
Sure. So we haven't implemented video interviewing for our clinical population, but we have for our corporate team. So I think that the switch to video interviewing was a pretty seamless one for us. Our customer success team is already fully remotely distributed, and so that wasn't any change of process. We always do a phone screen and then our final interview on Zoom. And so it was just a matter of me going into our applicant tracking system and changing our final interview template to say, click this Zoom link to join, instead of, expect to be at this address for our office, and here's how you can navigate there, XYZ. And I don't think it has really made any dramatic difference on the number of hires or the quality of hires by any means. I will say that I have hired 34% of our corporate team in the past 3 months, which is pretty hefty. So the majority of those did take place on Zoom.
Yeah, and separate from Zoom video interviewing, Casey, I'm curious, just the questions you ask in interviews. I remember you said that you start all of your interviews with a really great question. I'd love for you to share it if you don't mind.
Sure. The clients that we serve are the elderly and people that are going through medical appointments or have a medical need. And this population, they need more than just a ride. They need somebody to provide more than just pick them up, drop them off in front of the building, and they're on their own. So we always, and have been from day one, we always lead with one question, which is, what prompted you to apply? So that's the question that we always ask, and we close our mouth and we listen to their response. And depending on how they answer it, if it's all about the money and I need to make money and this is why I'm applying, they're not the right candidate to be working for us, because we look for somebody that wants to do this as a calling before it's a job. Don't get me wrong, we pay and we pay well, but the candidate, if they're looking at this as just a way to make a living, they're not the right person for us. So what prompted you to apply, and just close your mouth and listen to understand is what we do.
Yeah. All the praise hands for that, Casey. I can't endorse that anymore. We're the same way, both at connectRN and then also my previous employer too. We actually have a disqualifier in our applicant tracking system that is for their motives, usually relating to just being that and not actually caring about the mission. So I'm really happy that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and speaking of applying, we had a question come in. By the way, anyone can submit questions through the Q&A, and you can do this anonymously, so makes it easier. Somebody wants to know, Allison, how can nurses join the connectRN family right now? Are there openings?
Oh yeah, we are 100% hiring. So we're hiring for our clinical roles as well as for our corporate team. For our clinical roles, if you just go to connectrn.com and then click under the clinicians kind of button at the top, there's an easy, very accessible button that says sign up right at the top. So it's definitely the best way to go for that. And then for our corporate positions, it's just connectrn.com/careers.
Okay, great. And I believe when we chatted, you said you went from hiring like 20 people a month to like 100 people, 100 nurses per month. Is that right?
Yeah, all within the span of a quarter. It was crazy.
How have you had to scale up the corporate team in order to handle so much growth?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a wild ride. I am constantly talking to potential clinical recruiters for our nurse acquisition and onboarding team. And I think that the conversations that I've had have been really eye-opening. I've also found that sometimes just having healthcare experience isn't necessarily going to be the best fit for us, because we are a startup going through what may or may not be defined as hypergrowth, right? So I know that in some more traditional healthcare companies that wouldn't necessarily be accustomed to growing that quickly, they might not necessarily jive with that volume and adaptability and being able to just kind of go. So we've also found that sometimes more of like a business development representative might be a better fit for our clinical recruiting team than, say, somebody who's been a more traditional talent acquisition partner for a B2B SaaS company, for example.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So another question came in about the key technology tools that have been game-changing / crucial for your business, be it software or hardware. Obviously, we don't want to make this just all about Workstream, but I'm curious, like Allison, like what productivity tools are you using? Like, how do you guys communicate? Do you use Slack? Are you just how do you share, share information across your team?
Sure. So we do utilize Slack for all of our internal communications as well as email. We also utilize Salesforce as our CRM system. And the entire company is within Salesforce, because we need to make sure that not only are customers on the facility side being taken care of with the same level of care as our nurses are, and it's just one cohesive space for us to be able to tag people, and it's just going 24 hours a day, honestly, in there. But as far as the higher volume and kind of game-changing experiences, kind of like you were just mentioning with our nurse acquisition strategy, we do use Fountain as our applicant tracking system, which is really designed for the gig economy. So that really, really helped to take off our recruiting efforts late in 2019 when we switched off of Breezy HR.
Okay, great. Yeah, and Casey, how about you guys? How are you guys communicating internally? Are there any productivity tools that you guys use?
Sure. We use several different tools, from our dispatch software, Fast Track, to the Microsoft Office for messaging, and we use Google for a lot of different things. But it's most everybody is based here in Phoenix, so there is communication in the office. We're starting to come back into the office. Just the basic tools from Microsoft to our dispatch software, which is it's how we communicate with each other.
Yeah,
through the dispatch software.
Yeah, and what sort of, when we talk about productivity, I know one of the hard things, just from your use of Workstream to actually working with the individual groups, is the amount of paperwork. Do you have any advice for the communities you work with in order, or, with also the sort of transportation communities or services you work with, that could help onboard your people faster?
Yeah. The more you can automate, the more efficient you're going to be. So if you can leverage a tool like Workstream, where you can have your candidates sign the offer letters, they can sign documents related to the service agreement with you, the more efficient it's going to be for you. In the past, the way we used to do it is to get candidates to sign a hard copy and then scan it and upload it to the system. Luckily today, Workstream will allow you to do that, so you don't have to kill 1,000 trees to do the job and get it done.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for our business, we still serve agencies that require a lot of papers to be signed. From I'm not going to drive and smoke. I have the physical ability to do the job. These are forms, roughly 30 forms, 25 to 30, that every candidate has to sign, not because we require them to do it, but our client requires us to do it, and now it can be done electronically through Workstream.
And with you guys in so many states, which states in general seem to have like the most hurdles to jump through versus like the easier states to get into?
It all depends on the state. Some of them, it's a nightmare to navigate their processes, and other states like Arizona or California, where you would think California is difficult. It's not. So in general, without naming states, the closer you are to the East Coast, where they've been established, the Northeast, the more challenging it is to navigate the systems. The closer you are to the West Coast, it's, at least our experience, it's been easier for us to navigate through the licensing and getting qualified to do business.
Well, that's great news for Allison, because it sounds like you're in the heart of the hardest area to navigate.
Yeah, going west is going to be a cakewalk.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I hope so, right? But yeah, right now, like in general, we're all sort of in this mode of either reacting and putting out dumpster fires, or people have more time to reflect and think about sort of the business and why they originally joined. I'm curious with both of you, what have been sort of the biggest hurdles right now? And also what have been some of the learnings that have come out of this time?
Go ahead, Allison, please.
Sure. As far as biggest hurdles, I mean, just the sheer volume of inquiries from our clinical population over the past few months with the pandemic have been crazy. For example, and I might be misrepresenting these numbers slightly, but I looked at a report from our customer success team late last week, and our call volume for that team, which is, if I were to take an educated guess, probably about 75 or 80% on the clinical side to 20% on the facility side, increased from maybe like a few hundred cases per month, maybe 400, all the way up to 3,000 in March. So naturally, we had to scale that customer success team very, very quickly just to deal with that volume. And I'm currently the only one that actually does HR for connectRN. So I'm acting as HR business partner, not only to our corporate team, but also to all of our clinical population. So the amount of pings that I've received has also been pretty astronomical, since I always ask them to make sure that I'm in the know if they have a medical reason to be out. So if we need to implement FMLA, et cetera, I'm able to do so, or file for workers' compensation. Just the sheer volume at the start of the pandemic. No one predicted the pandemic. So that's been a hurdle in itself to be 100% there for our clinical population and corporate team at the same time, while probably prioritizing our clinical team a little bit more, if I'm being honest, during this time. And then the other one was the biggest opportunity.
Or really just sort of what have you, in this time of introspection, what are you thinking about as far as sort of the business and long-term vision? What drew you to it in the first place? Have you, I don't know, just what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that coming into connectRN, I didn't know a ton about the nursing population. I didn't know really anything about the long-term care industry. My own grandmother was at a nursing facility, and I didn't really know a ton about the operations behind it. And she was also down in Florida while I was in Massachusetts. So I was a little bit removed from the process. Now, hearing what these clinicians and nurses work with in terms of maybe with patient ratios on a day-to-day basis, my heart really goes out to them, especially during these pandemic times where the ratio isn't always in their favor. So I think that has been a little bit surprising to me, but what really drew me in addition to the fact that I was able to continue into a business line that was a double-sided marketplace, which is a business perspective that really interested me, was the opportunity to provide flexible working options to so many Americans. Because we were founded on creating that flexibility rather for clinicians across the country, it makes me think about the ripple effects that I can have, because I can recruit so many people, I can play HR business partner to so many people, but if the company that I work for tells me, hey, we just got a message from Nurse Sandra in Maryland saying that she was finally able to get all of her kids' Christmas gifts that they wanted this year because of connectRN, or so-and-so was able to pay their rent on time because they were able to pick up enough shifts to make ends meet. It's like a game changer for me. It's no question. Why would I go to another employer when I can so clearly see the impact that we're making? It's everything.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, the mission really is just so critical here. Casey, dumpster fires and visions. What are your thoughts?
The challenges for us was how do you figure out what to do without having any experience in a situation like this? Just like any other business, we had our contingency planning. We thought about what we do if this happens or that happens, and plan for whatever scenario we can think of. We didn't plan for this. So yeah, as the CEO of this company, how do you keep everybody at ease? How do you reassure the team that we're going to prevail? Yeah, we are going through uncertain times and things are tough. No one knows how long it's going to take or what's going to happen, but having faith that we will prevail at the end of the day. That was just calming everybody down while we're going through it. I mean, we had no idea what's going to happen to the business, how our clients are going to react to it, if we're going to even stay in business because of this. And that was the biggest challenge. And luckily, we were able to navigate through this and put our heads together with the rest of the team, communicate with everybody, telling them what we know, and if we didn't know anything, we'd just be as honest as anybody can be, and realize that there's no playbook for this. And by putting my head with the leadership team and everybody in the organization together, we will figure out what we need to do and prevail at the end. So that was the biggest challenge. It's like driving on the Mass Turnpike going to New York or Highway 80 going to Sacramento and 80 miles per hour and trying to change a flat tire as you're driving. Right? You don't know how to do it, and you need to figure out a way to do it. So that was the biggest challenge. For us, it's reflecting back on our business. What it became clear to us when we went back and thought about, so how did we go from being in Phoenix, one client, to serving multi-billion-dollar companies and being in all these states? What made us who we are, and what led to this growth and this expansion? It became very clear. It was who we hired, what we looked for, how we trained them, and how we kept them motivated to take care of our clients. At the end of the day, the people who take care of our clients are our drivers. It's not me. It's not anybody who works in our office. It's not anybody who works in our headquarters. It's the drivers who are in the geography that do a phenomenal job taking care of the elderly and the patients. And if it wasn't for them, this business would not exist. So just reflecting back on what led to our growth, and it was good to just realize it again. I've known this, that hiring the right people, having the right people on the bus in the right seats is the right thing to do. But going through this time where things are uncertain, it reinforced what I knew, and it reiterated to us what we need to continue to do in the future, because without our drivers, without having the right people taking care of our clients, but communicating with them and keeping motivated, no business would exist, including us.
What you say reminds me of that Richard Branson quote where he says, don't put customers first, put your employees first, and they'll take care of your customers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the successful companies, from Starbucks to Southwest Airlines, to
Costco,
or Costco or Walmart, they put their people first. They paid them more. They offered them employee stock ownership plan, even for part-time employees in the case of Starbucks. And look at Starbucks now. I don't know what their revenue is. I think the last time I looked was close to 50 billion, because they put people first. And same with Southwest Airlines. And for us, we did it intuitively, but now we're putting more behind it.
Yeah. I also love those Southwest jokes. It's just, Great humor on the plane. The question came in for Casey. I noticed that you hire a ton of drivers. So this person's a delivery company facing issues with high turnover of drivers because of Amazon DSPs springing up left and right. Would love to know, how do you retain your drivers?
That's a great question. There's no one method, but there's few different things. It starts with treating the driver or the person the way you want to be treated. Having an open door policy, recognizing them when they do something well, as in they take care of the client, not just, when we get a call or an email or a message from a client saying, Allison in Phoenix did a great job taking care of my mom, or Allison or we have a great lady, Allison in Phoenix, or
Good name.
yeah, Sue has done a phenomenal job, or Linda in Texas. Pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, just want to let you know, we got a call from Mrs. Smith, and I just want to thank you. Just want to thank you for what you did. So it's the communication, it's the recognizing them, it's explaining the why behind what we do. It starts with hiring the right people, like I mentioned early, by asking them why they want to be part of this team. But that's not where it ends. It's communicating the why behind what we do, why it's critical when you serve an elderly person to speak slowly, because sometimes they're hard of hearing, or why you want to make it all about the elderly person, because sometimes they're lonely and you're probably the only person that they've talked to. Think about your grandparents, think about your elderly neighbors. They're lonely. And if you take an extra minute to just talk to them and look at them as a walking, talking encyclopedia, because they are, and learn from them, they can feel good about themselves, but you can also learn something from them. So it's explaining the why behind what the company does to the people that work for the company and are part of the company. It keeps the drivers, in the case of the gentleman who asked the question, stay with the company. If they share the same view of how you treat people, and you treat them well, and you listen to them, and you recognize them when they do something good, and you take the time to do it, not because it's because it's the right thing to do. I can tell you, with our company, and we have hundreds, if not thousands, of drivers, every morning, the first thing I do is, when it's somebody's birthday, I send an email, and it's coming from me. I don't have an admin. I don't have somebody, and it's not an automated system. It's just to say to the person, happy birthday, hope you have a great day. And pick up the phone and call 4 or 5 people a week, drivers. That's what I do. Not just to talk to them, but to ask, what else can we do as a company to make you happy and be the employer of choice? And again, I used it before. Listen, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, to listen, and listen to what they say, and see if it makes sense to change. And if it doesn't, explain to them why it doesn't make sense to change. So it all starts and ends with communication with the right people.
Yeah.
I know that's a long way to answer the question, but that's...
No, it was very insightful. I think, just the tidbits of wisdom there, from, paying attention to the people's birthdays, to really just making sure they understand the vision, or connected to it, and what makes their job unique is so important. Allison, I want to shift to you just a little bit on the same topic. You obviously have nurses going into facilities, and there's sometimes a bit of a division in terms of how the communities treat, I got communities, the communities treat their full-time staff versus their, what they consider sort of their agency nurses. How do you guys go above and beyond to protect your, your staff? And what have you sort of done with the communities to push for more on behalf of your workers?
100%. So kind of similarly to what you and Casey have echoed, I mean, everything with employee retention goes back to caring first and foremost about your employees. I think that our CFO at connectRN says it best. Our nurses don't work for us, we work for nurses. So ultimately, when we get reports of a nurse that may have been accused for clocking in late or not providing the most exemplary care, we're not just going to necessarily default to what the facility is telling us. Every single time I'm reaching out to that nurse or clinician, I'm saying, hey, how can I best advocate for you? Let me know what happened from your perspective. And whether or not that determination is that, maybe they made an oops, or, hey, they actually didn't mess up, and maybe there was a problem on connectRN's app with clocking in, right? That certainly happened a number of times. Not to say that our app has a lot of bugs or anything.
It's a startup, it gets better.
Yeah, I mean, startup life, I think every company has its hiccups. And so you can't just default to believe everything that, the paying customer says. Because if you do always side with us, or sorry, not us, the facilities rather, then they can go and work at any other staffing agency in the US. They can go and drive for any other company. They can go and drive for the Amazons of the world. Do you think Jeff Bezos cares about all of those drivers? I can guarantee you he's not calling them all the way Casey is. That's like hugely respectful. So similarly to Casey, we have something called Power Hour each week where we separate into teams to make it kind of fun. And we just call nurses for an hour and say like, hey, how you doing? I noticed you haven't picked up shifts in a while. Is there a reason for that? Do you maybe not understand the app? Is there something that I can help you with? Or maybe it's just COVID-19 and that's not something that's necessarily within our realm of control, but hey, we would love to see you back on the platform when you are able to. And the amount of times that I've seen employees just saying thank you for appreciating them, even outside of Nurse Appreciation Week and Nurse Appreciation Month, because this is something that we've been doing now since I've started at connectRN, it's just huge. It really, really, really goes back to actually caring about your employees, whether they're full-time, whether they're per diem, whether they're part-time, whether they're hourly, exempt, non-exempt, it doesn't matter. You need to care about your people. And so first and foremost, we always want to connect, unintentional connect with connectRN, but we always want to first connect with our clinicians to see how are they feeling, how can we help them, how can we advocate for them, and then figure out the rest. And that's really key for all employee retention.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Casey, are you going to mind if we do a power hour and we're hitting you guys up once a week and checking in? I think we might. Okay, we might be implementing that soon. It's something we keep talking about, just getting more people on the phone right now, and talking to customers more. We're getting, our CEO even has his notes every week of every customer he's spoken to, just to share that with the team as far as like, okay, like here's what's going on in their world. And I think team-wide, we just need to scale that as kind of the next step. There was another question that came in for Casey as a follow-up. What do you do to create growth and progression for your roles? Are there any training tips for development in a role that doesn't necessarily have a typical career progression? So we talk a lot about like career progression being, how you reduce turnover. With drivers, this is a little bit more difficult. Is there anything that you guys are offering or are doing in order to help people think about that?
Sure. No, that's a great question too. So as far as training, with the team that works for us in the office, in our main office, we do a lot of information sharing. So everything about the weekly revenues to the cost of goods sold to the gross margin to what are the expenses, and with the goal of making sure that everybody understands that how every decision that somebody makes, that could be a dispatcher working in the dispatch operation and offering to pay somebody more money, how does that impact the gross margin? So there's a lot of training that happens indirectly by sharing information about everything that we do. So everybody is marching to the same end goal. As far as career growth with the company, with drivers, for every geography that we operate in, we have a lead driver, and that lead driver is always promoted from within. It's somebody that has been with us and has done a great job. It could be the first week, or it could be the first month or 6 months, but they get what we do. They're excited about what we do. The clients love them. They love what we do, and they become lead drivers. And there's career opportunities for them. I can tell you, Dave from Seattle is coming here tomorrow. He's been with us for 2 years as a driver to start with in Seattle, then the lead driver in Seattle for the last year. And now he's going from being an independent contractor to a full-time employee. Same with Stacy in Atlanta. Today was his first day as a full-time employee with benefits and employee stock ownership plan. Same with Sammy in Decatur, Alabama. She started with us 3 months ago, and now she's working as an employee. So there are a lot of career opportunities, and we look for people that get what we do. They take care of the client the way everybody should take care of the client, which is treat them the way you want to be treated. And then, if they're interested in doing different things, we always look for good people. That, like in the last 2 months, as everybody knows, things have been slow. So instead of reducing hours or reducing pay or reduce the force, what we've decided to do is cross-train everybody. So at a high level, we have a customer service function, we have a recruiting function, and we have dispatch operation function. Instead of having people just specialized in one thing, get them cross-trained. So if we're busy, then let a recruiter be doing the customer service or doing the billing and accounting. So we just look for good people. We don't look for the skills. We look for the attitude and train for the skills. And if they're interested in growing, and we would love to share whatever we know. We don't know everything. We can learn from. I learn from our drivers and our employees as much as they learn from me. So that's how. Again, it's a long way to answer the question, but it's having an open, transparent environment where everybody learn from each other. We don't have formal training sessions where we're going to train you what gross margin is, but we talk about it so much it gets ingrained in somebody's head. And if they don't understand it, my first reaction is go to Google what it is. If you don't know what it is, I'll be more than happy to sit down with you as long as you want and explain it to you, but explain the why it impacts the business, why something has an impact on the business, so everybody can march to the same drum beat, having the same goals.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you know so many people's names at your company and where they're located and how long they've worked there. I think that speaks very highly of you as a CEO, that you're so attuned to that. Allison, you, I believe, built out your own sort of career progression program at your last company. I'd love to share how that came about and what you did there.
Yeah, so in my last company, for context, we used analytics to match families to share a Montessori trained nanny. Now, when you think about a nanny, that's not necessarily a profession that you think about having any sort of career progression, but we had hired nannies when we'd first started as a company and then existed for about 3 years, give or take. So for those that had started with us, like from way back in the day, they were antsy to do more than just get paid a little bit more than, say, the newer employees. And so I would encourage people leaders and, executive leaders to think outside of the box for career progression. Just because a lead driver doesn't exist today, for example, or a nanny lead, as we would call them, didn't exist, didn't mean that it didn't have to. So then we had nanny lead, and then nanny mentor. And so by developing that, we also created clear structures for compensation that incentivized people to want to continue to work for us on a longer term basis. But also too, by doing that, we were actually able to create a really awesome sense of community. So if you're working with an hourly population, and especially if I think about drivers, I mean, it's probably a pretty isolating job if you're driving product as opposed to people from door to door. So if I can talk to, like, let's say, for example, if I'm a driver and I've got to go from Boston down to DC to haul some freight, and I can talk to my driver mentor friend for at least an hour or two on the phone to start passing the time. Maybe they can use some of that time to tell me about tips and tricks that they've been able to use to climb up to that mentorship position. And simultaneously, as Casey said too, cross-training is always super helpful, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's been developed extensively. You can look to many of the free resources online, like Coursera and other e-learning websites. But also too, something that we did in my last company was a lunch and learn, where this was entirely voluntary. We said, pick something that you feel you've got a confident grasp on and teach the rest of the company about it. And so we learned about everything from how to conduct a behavioral interview to cybersecurity pitfalls. Spoiler alert, I clicked on the spam email. They asked me what flavor ice cream I wanted, and I fell for it. So learning these like things that I never would have thought of as an HR professional were really cool. And we were able to record them and share that with our hourly workforce too. So that way they can upskill in ways that they never thought of before. Maybe it's time hacks for professionals. So perhaps those tips are involving calendar blocking or any other number of skills that are extremely applicable across the board to so many. But that community piece was really, really helpful, not only in my last company, but also at connectRN too. So I would encourage connecting people together, because people will often stick around, as you know, for bosses, most definitely, but also if your peers are there to support you too, in a job that's often isolating, like being a nanny or a driver or anything else where you don't get a ton of human interaction, I imagine that would be a pretty big game changer.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you could just listen to the recordings of those lunch and learns, and maybe it's, something where you can have it be a stream on the, on your, radio or whatever it is that you're driving, or when you're a nanny and they're napping. I can see that being very helpful as a way to train and also connect. Well, we are over time. This is a great, really a great, just opportunity to learn from both of you as to how you've grown the business and how you've retained employees. Thank you so much for joining. We've recorded this, and we are going to transcribe and post it on Monday on the Workstream blog. So for anyone who joined late, please, you can watch it there. And thank you guys again for joining us, and I hope to chat with you again soon.
Thank you, Lydia.
Thanks, Lydia. Thanks, Workstream.
And have a great rest of your week.
You too. Thanks, guys.
Likewise. Bye.